Yeah, we'll get started. I do want to say hello again. I'm Will Geiken. I'm a California Sea Grant State Fellow working with San Francisco Estuary Partnership, and I've been working with the planning team, Heidi, Evan, and Jesse on this workshop. And I want to express my personal thanks to you all for being here. I've really enjoyed getting to meet people and learn a ton over the past 2 days. So first and foremost, thank you to you all and to all of our presenters for being here. We do have one more session, and that is our vision for the future, next generation at the shoreline session. This topic has been touched upon over the past couple of days multiple times, which has been really encouraging. And that is, how do we engage and bring in the next generation of environmental leaders? What are the important considerations that we need to take into account as we're working with youth or engaging youth in these planning processes? And where are some opportunities where we could increase that engagement? Where are some places maybe that youth aren't currently engaged or acting in? What are the ways in which we can bring youth into those spaces successfully while keeping in mind that there are some differences between a youth who's participating with an agency and other agency members. So to that end, I'm really excited to be joined or to be listening along with you all as Diana Fu from San Francisco Estuary Partnership and Nina Omomo from Literacy for Environmental Justice share some of their experiences and observations in the work that they've done. And I won't go on any longer than that, and I'll turn it over to Diana.
Thanks, Will. Hi, everyone. Thank you for bearing along with us through the last session of the day. Hopefully you got in a good sun salutation, maybe a good neck stretch. Folks in the back, totally fine if you want to just be in the back and chill. Maybe you're scared of judgment if you're online shopping while you're listening into these talks. It is all fine. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the Estuary Youth Council. And this is very much a new program at the San Francisco Estuary Partnership. And by new program, I mean we are about 3 months into the program with our youth. So we are still figuring stuff out. So yeah, I'll just dive right into it. So what is the Estuary Youth Council? At its core, it's a youth leadership and professional development program dedicated to empowering young people to engage with environmental and climate challenges facing the SF estuary region. The Youth Council was very much a pie in the sky idea. For me, grounded just in the strong conviction that our community's young people will inherit the estuary from us and thus have an inherent right to participate in discussions for the way it is managed and how it's going to benefit their future. And just a little bit about the goals of the Estuary Youth Council. There's really two main goals, and I see them as mutually inclusive and overlapping. The first is to provide leadership and professional development opportunities to emerging environmental leaders from underrepresented and underserved communities in the San Francisco Estuary watershed. And the second goal is really to address knowledge gaps. So really thinking about these two goals working in tandem, how can we invite young people to advise environmental managers, planners, and decision makers by filling in existing knowledge gaps of youth-centered perspectives, concerns, and priorities in the restoration and adaptation of the San Francisco Estuary. I will talk a little bit about just building the right community-based, or kind of like building the right structure for this program to take off. When I was considering the Estuary Youth Council, this is something that the San Francisco Estuary Partnership has never done before. What does a youth council do, right? And we don't have any, like prior to this, we didn't have any relationships really with organizations that were youth-facing or youth-centered. So, really doing our due diligence and going out to our community-based partners, many of whom do work with youth, and that is their area of expertise. So I just wanted to shout out these 3 community-based organizations that have been from the get-go, really since like the idea was formed, and then just me starting a conversation like talking through how the Estuary Youth Council is going to function in its first year, what the programming is going to look like, what kind of opportunities we want to offer. It was really these three organizations that I consider, and I wish could be sitting here with me right now, because I feel that they could provide as much perspective, if not more, than myself. But just big shouts out to Restore the Delta up in Stockton, Nuestra Casa in East Palo Alto, and Mycelium Youth Network based out in Oakland. I alluded a little bit in the last slide to this collaborative visioning and design. Time and time again, when we're thinking about community engagement, I've heard people say, or at least communities say that they wish they would have been involved sooner. So, having this opportunity to really dig in on kind of like a broad ranging strategy for how we're going to run the Estuary Youth Council was really, really important in getting this program off the ground. So we had a formal program kickoff with our staff, as well as the three community-based organizations that I mentioned before. We spent time co-visioning, what the Estuary Youth Council program was going to be, including identifying short-term goals and long-term missions that would ground the work of the group. And eventually the Estuary Youth Council, so that we could come to a uniform decision of what success looks like in this first year. And also, just importantly, providing an anchor for the integrity of the program in a funding landscape that will often pull small organizations and projects and programs in many different directions. So while it's only been partway through our first year, as I mentioned, let's see here. Yep, 3 months, 3 months with our youth. I can already share that we've been approached with many opportunities, which is really exciting. But I did want to mention, just, instead of rushing forward to meet these opportunities, I think it was really important for us as a group to prioritize relationship and community building. So just, kind of as like a note, in a world of endless deadlines and bureaucracy, we've tried our best to move at the pace of trust, and that's slow. Realizing I'm missing some of my notes here. Oh no. Okay. So as I mentioned before, this co-visioning and co-development phase of the Estuary Youth Council took about 3 months, and each community-based organization began recruiting from their communities, either through existing programs that their organizations offered. So for example, either in-school programs or internship programs that were already housed within their organization, or doing direct outreach, tabling at community events. Each community-based organization had a highly individualized recruitment process that identified the best candidates out of their respective applicant pools and communities. I really had no hand in the recruitment process, and at this point, I'd like to just point this out as an example of placing trust and faith in each of the community-based organizations, that they knew their communities the best, and given our shared understanding of our vision of success, they knew which candidates would be most competitive for the Estuary Youth Council program. And once we recruited, 3 youth from each communities of Stockton, East Palo Alto, and Oakland, we took a step back and reflected as a group about what it meant to invite youth into what has primarily been an adult space, right? As I mentioned before, when we took time to do this co-visioning and co-development, everyone in the room was an adult, and we're bringing youth in to make decisions. So just kind of recognizing that, setting the stage for where we are and where we've begun, and also where we want to go. One of our project partners coined the term adultism, which I think is a great term. It's really just a term used to describe a culture that prioritizes the needs and concerns of adults, who exercise their power in a way that systematically discriminates against young people. I'm sure all of us have faced this also as young people, when adults are like, we really care about your opinion, but actually when you say something, sit down and ask me when to use the restroom, right, when you're in class. So examples like that, where youth receive really confusing messages about what it means to be a leader, what it means to follow rules, what it means to participate, right, in a collaborative process. So really thinking critically about that in our first couple of months as the Estuary Youth Council and its community-based organization advisory. As a group of adults who've designed this program, we are constantly still navigating and that balance between creating a safe space for young people to engage while also empowering them and challenging them to meet difficult moments in conversations, such as holding us and other adultist systems accountable. I did want to share some lessons learned and key takeaways. As I mentioned before, we're still very early on in the program, but already there have been so many just moments for growth and learning. Some of them that I really wanted to just touch on today was really taking a look at, community engagement. I've been hearing that all day. What does it really mean? At this point, they're just words to me now. But like, what does it really mean to engage deeply and meaningfully with our communities? Really thinking about how we define expertise, right? Whose time do we value? Why is, for example, an agency person's hourly rate so much higher than someone who might be doing work on the ground in the community? Why when we're talking about workforce development, we're talking about, the next generation of environmental leaders. Why is it that we're seeing investment in Black and Brown communities for field jobs and not in, positions of leadership and in decision-making rooms, right? I invite you all, if you haven't heard of this resource, to look up the Spectrum of Community Engagement by the Movement Strategy Center. They do a great job kind of explaining the different steps to engaging a community from, outright marginalization to tokenism and then to consultation and eventually, community ownership and being community led, where governments are really kind of the ones trailing behind the community. That's leading the force. Another, important lesson that I've learned in these first couple of months with the Estuary Youth Council is just really building in intentional spaciousness for rest and reflection. And, like I said before, moving at the space of trust or at the speed of trust, building in that space just to say, whoa, hold on. I think everyone's feeling a little bit hesitant about what we want to do next. Let's hit pause for a second and really let's be intentional about this, right? I feel like oftentimes we can get really caught in just meeting deadlines, and deadlines are just deadlines at the end of the day. People are more important, and relationships are important. It's hard to put a price on the value of a relationship. So yeah, just being very intentional about, putting in checkpoints for rest, reflection, ways that we can kind of improve and address perhaps how we want to improve what we've done in the past 3 months, something that we're already looking at. Another lesson learned and key takeaway is just being okay with the discomfort of the unknown. I started this program with like a seed of an idea when I was microwaving my lunch. And now it's turned into this whole thing. And, through it all, I've just been like, where am I going to get this money from? Who am I going to contact? Like, I have worked as an environmental educator before, but like, I don't know anything about empowering young people. What does that look like? And I think just being comfortable with the unknown, I mean, it's just stepping into a leadership position, frankly, has been really enlightening. Having faith in others. Let's see, another one, leadership can make or break cultural shifts. I mentioned this because I feel like as a relatively new employee of the San Francisco Estuary Partnership, I walked into what I felt like was a very scary agency space, very rooted in legacy and generations of folks who have already been doing this work. And, coming into a space like that as me, as like, someone who's early in my career, I'm like, I don't really feel like I know how to contribute to the space. But, frankly, like I have great supervisors, and I believe that the leadership at my workplace and my organization is great. And I believe, their support of the Estuary Youth Council program can really change the culture of what our organization does, quite frankly, and who's in our ecosystem. We're all talking about community engagement, extending the table and thinking about who's at the table. And, a lot of the times, folks on the bottom can do their best to try and invite people in, but there can only be so much that's done unless there's, frankly, like power and resources behind that. And yeah, the last thing I just wanted to mention was that, throughout all of this exploration of the Estuary Youth Council and kind of these big looming questions of what a youth council does and governance and sharing power, collaborative visioning, all of these big ideas, through it all, I mean, relationships have been the most valuable thing that have come out of the Estuary Youth Council. Obviously, there are things that we're still building with the organizations that we're working with. And I feel proud to say that, navigating these relationships as a government agency with community-based organizations, hopefully sets an example for at least our young folks when they're walking into the space to know that they're a part of something bigger than themselves that's happening outside of just the estuary, but this relationship between agencies and community-based organizations, but mostly with underserved and frontline communities. I believe relationships have been the most valuable capital that we have. And frankly, they need to be treated as such. We've done a lot, but I think there's still a long way to go for us. With that, questions, and also I just wanted to, I don't know if we're sharing out slides later, but I've linked all of my co-designers and community-based organization advisory committee on here, as well as that resource that I mentioned earlier about community engagement. Thank you.
And we'll invite Nina up next. Thanks, Nina.
My computer on here. Awesome. Oh, why did this go off? Awesome. I don't know why this keeps turning off. Hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Nina Omomo, and I am the Community Stewardship Manager at a nonprofit called Literacy for Environmental Justice. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about, building a living shoreline in Bayview Heron's Head Park through community stewardship, youth education, and workforce development. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about three different things. First, I'm going to give a little bit of a history and context about Literacy for Environmental Justice and the org. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about a workforce development project that we've been working on. And then third, I'm going to talk about our experience with community engagement. Also, Literacy for Environmental Justice, I'm going to shorten to LEJ, L-E-J, so you don't have to say it every time. So LEJ is located in Bayview Hunters Point, which is the southeast San Francisco. It's southeast San Francisco, a neighborhood in southeast San Francisco, and it is a low-income community with over 70% of the people living below the federal poverty line. It's a community of color. It's historically a Black community, and In the early days of Ledge, young people, high schoolers, community members, community organizations, members of Ledge all got together to take down and shut down a PG&E power plant that was located in Hunters Point. The power plant was leaking a lot of harmful substances like PCBs and asbestos, lead, and it was causing a lot of harmful health impacts to nearby residents. The PG&E power plant is just one of many industrial sites that are found in Bayview Hunters Point, because Bayview Hunters Point is the only neighborhood in San Francisco that is zoned for both residential and industrial use. So that means that there's a lot of industrial facilities that are located right next to homes where people live. So 25 years later, we are still running programs, including environmental education and ecological restoration in Southeast San Francisco. Bayview is considered an environmental justice community. It's a term that probably everyone's heard, but in summary, it means that all people have the right to clean air, clean water, to live in a healthy and safe environment. And anyone can learn more about environmental justice just by researching it, because there's a lot more to environmental justice principles than just that. That's just a general way of describing it. So this is a couple pictures of Bayview. And if you look at Bayview on a map and you see green spaces on a map, this is what they look like. This is the shoreline of Bayview, and in the upper right, that is a shoreline called Yosemite Slough that was taken a couple years ago. So since then has been worked on a little bit, but this is kind of like the reality of what the green spaces in Bayview and Hunters Point look like. And then on the left, that is the Hunters Point Shipyard, which is a federal Superfund site. This means that the federal government has deemed that it requires long-term cleanup, which makes sense because there is nuclear radiation to this day on that site that dates back to World War II. All right. I know the history is kind of long, but I think it's the context and the history is really important to why we do this work. So this is the last slide about the history. Here's a picture of Hunters Point Shipyard during World War II. So during World War II, mostly all Black families and individuals were recruited to work at this naval base. And all the ships that they worked on there were, not all of them, but some of them were part of the Manhattan Project, which means that they were all part of nuclear testing. Black and brown naval officers would clean them up and these radioactive materials without knowing it. And then there would in turn be negative health consequences, and their families and them would be impacted. So after World War II, there was not a lot of adequate support to transition people out of the military. And even to this day, the old naval housing has transitioned to public housing that is located in Bayview Hunters Point. And we're still seeing the impacts of it today, and there's still nuclear contamination to this day. So this is because of zoning, and there are 300 toxic sites in Bayview Hunters Point. The bottom right in the red, you can see that is the shipyard, and that's the Superfund site. And you can also see that all the shapes and all the circles and all the diamonds and all of those are representative of other hazardous waste, underground storage tanks, and other hazardous sites, all located in Hunters Point, Bayview. And you can find a lot of this information using Cal Enviro Screening. It's a really great resource that shows you data like this and demographics all over the state of California. So on that note, I do want to mention, since Bayview is is a community that borderlines a shoreline. Sea level rise is a huge threat to the community, not just in terms of like infrastructure, like houses and businesses, but also sea level rise can like unearth and move material around. And the shipyard is a prime example of an area that can be impacted by sea level rise. Along with the effects of climate change, Bayview Hunters Point residents suffer from poor air quality, and asthma is highly concentrated in this neighborhood. So if you look at the map, the top two maps show that there's the highest concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide in Bayview compared to any other neighborhood in San Francisco. And the particulate matter is the highest in Bayview compared to any other community in San Francisco. That's the bottom left. And the asthma hospitalizations are the highest in Bayview compared to any other neighborhood in San Francisco. That's the lower right map. So Ledge has responded to these issues over the past 25 years by working to create opportunities for residents to improve their health and to participate in healthy activities, and also to help improve the health of their environment. One of the ways we have done that is by, we have been contracted by the Port of San Francisco to work with specifically our workforce development program, which is transitional youth people from the neighborhood, to work at Heronshead Park and work on this shoreline resilience project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this project. It is an experiment of new stabilization techniques that are kind of referred to as like a living shoreline. Traditionally, shoreline erosion has been mitigated with what we call gray or harder techniques, which are demonstrated on the right side of the bottom scale. And examples of this are like concrete or boulders or like riprap, like literal hard surfaces. And now like a lot of restoration projects are experimenting with more on the left side of the scale, which what we're referring to as a living shoreline. And instead of putting in those hardscapes, we would be putting in, for example, native plant revegetation instead, which would provide a buffer for the upland zone and would do really essentially the same thing, but even in a better way than those hardscapes. And a little bit of full circle with the history of Ledge is the power plant that Ledge had shut down. Used to be, if you see the top right map, that's Heronshead Park. The top left kind of pool that's like a perfect square almost, that's where the power plant used to be. So 25 years later, we're back where we started, but now we are doing wetland restoration and for a park in the community. Going into more of a couple of the details about our project, we first started in 2020, and all of the work that we've done at the park has been with our, what we call our eco apprentices, which is our workforce development program of transitional age people who live in the community and are from San Francisco and specifically Bayview Hunters Point. This was our first year. We did a lot of Algerian sea lavender removal. And when we first started, there was spots of the park that were covered almost 80–90% of the landscape with this wetland weed. A really cool part about the removal that we've done there with the apprentices is that instead of using like Roundup and other chemicals, which they would usually do and have previously done at this park to remove these, we hand pulled everything. And it takes a lot longer, but it keeps chemicals out of the park and out of the water and out of Bayview Hunters Point, which we don't need more of those. So we've hand pulled over 4 acres as of the last 2 or 3 years. All right, second year restoration, continuing of the removal, and then also incorporating a huge native plant outplanting. This consisted of saltgrass, marsh gum plant, and alkali heath mostly. And as of last year, we've outplanted over 14,000 natives with our eco apprentices. This was this year when we did 8,500 natives this year. And this project, I would say, has been one of the greatest ways we've gotten to have local people come out, local youth come out and do this work, because with the port in our contract, they had made it so part of the contract was that we needed to hire and have local people, which we already did, but part of their requirements was for people who worked in the community to be part of the people who are paid to do this work. So on the side of like local agencies and government, like that is something that is important that they can do to make sure that the people who are working in the area are from the community. All right. Oh, last picture. This is us working on the newly constructed berm that they built for stabilization. And then on the right is alkali heath that had been blooming the year after we planted it, and in an area that used to be covered by the Algerian sea lavender. All right, so a little bit more about our community engagement and programming. Really the three things that we kind of break up all of our programming engagement into is one, youth programming through District 10 schools and Bayview Hunters Point organizations. Two, the workforce development program, which is the eco apprenticeship, with outreach to transitional age youth, which is usually 18 to 24. And lastly is kind of generalized, but community stewardship and outreach in general. So a lot of the ecological restoration that we do and stewardship that we do, we try to hold days for people to come out and do the work with us. And historically, it's always been that way. Before COVID, we would have probably around 10,000 volunteers annually. After COVID, we seen a huge decline and we're still getting back to that, but it's something that we used to do, so we know that we can still do it and we're going to do it, but it's going to take a while for us to get back to that point. One of the things we do for specifically for people who are K through 12 is we run programs with the local schools, specifically District 10, which is the local school district. And we run what we call eco adventures, and it gives an opportunity to bring classrooms out to specifically like Candlestick Park or Heron's Head Park, and we'll do programming such as like kayaking, nature walks, kind of like anything in between that has to do with environmental education and getting a chance to spend time outdoors in a local open space. And then again, the eco apprenticeship, which is really great because it gets people who don't necessarily have any environmental background or formal education. Like we're really focused and prioritize on hiring people who not only live in the area, but don't have any formal education, college education, or any environmental experience. So we're trying to offer a non-traditional pathway for underrepresented San Francisco younger youth and younger people to get into the environmental field, and offering training programs like this where people can come and learn about native plants, native plant propagation, about their neighborhood, about how to run these programs themselves, is really our goal. And it's really great because the goal is to create a pipeline from beginning at Ledge and then having them go into whatever it is that they want to do, even if it's not environmental work, giving them like a holistic experience in their community so that they can move on to jobs that green color or not, can kind of give them that beginning start. One of the most important things that we found in our eco apprenticeship specifically is offering not only paid internships, but like competitively paid rates for the internships. So it's really important that if, just for example, like Presidio Nursery or San Bruno Watch Nursery, if they're paying interns at 20, 21, like you should also be paying them 20, 21 or more to work in this community. So that's something that we've worked towards and have gotten to a point where we've been a lot better at, but the rate of pay has to be competitive or people in the neighborhood won't be drawn or won't be able to take jobs like these. All right. And yeah, so we've grown over 5,000 plants every year, and the nursery that we run it so that we can provide plants for open spaces and public open spaces for specifically Bayview. And we've planted over 250,000 native plants in the last 25 years, only in Southeast San Francisco. And we've also restored over 100 acres of public open space in Southeast San Francisco since we've got started. And that is all work that's been done by thousands of people, a lot of them young and youth. And we look forward to continuing to do that in the community for the people who are doing it, and it's benefiting the people who are doing it. So it's the community who's benefiting from them doing that work. And that's kind of the most important thing at the end of the day. And I think that's it. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me, and that's our website for Literacy for Environmental Justice and our Instagram.